welcome. Welcome. Special live edition of the best track and field podcast, the audio version of the best track and field website. This is Track Talk, Let'sRun.com's podcast. I am Robert Johnson. This is Jonathan Galton, Nanjing, China. Fantastic day two. World Indoors has finished up. Jakob Ingebrigtsen, folks, is golden once again. Shelby Houlihan has won silver. Kai Robinson won bronze. Who predicted that? Holloway remains undefeated, 72-0 in the 60-meter hurdles. Christopher Bailey, 45.08. Leads a 1-2-3 U.S. sweep in 400 hurdles. As Amber Anning wins the women's 400. Mondo wins again, 6.15. And my God, this morning, Josh Hoey, how good is this guy? Is he going to pull Wilson Kipketer and break the world record in the final tomorrow? All of that and more. Let's get right to it. We don't have a lot of time. We don't want John to be stuck at the facility. He's been working so hard. The media bus will be taking you back to the hotel soon. Great day of track and field, John.
Yeah, I know. These championships, I always forget, like the morning sessions feels like an entirely different day. I suppose it was an entirely different day if you're watching back home in the States. Actually met up with a couple Let's Run Supporters Club members at Pizza Hut and had some escargot at the Pizza Hut in the Nanjing Mall. So it's there's a first for everything here. You can pretty much buy everything there. We're not here to talk about Chinese Pizza Huts. We're here to talk about the World Indoor Championships. Jakob Ingebrigtsen, Shelby Houlihan gets a medal in her first World Championship appearance back from her doping suspension. Yeah, it was a great night, and Grant Holloway does Grant Holloway stuff, Mondo doing Mondo stuff. I think we have to start with this 3K, though, Robert, the men's 3K, because Jakob Ingebrigtsen, he is one of the superstars of the sport. It's interesting, in this mixed zone, a lot of the interviews I do with the Americans, I'm kind of the only person doing it, or even not the Americans, like Kai Robinson, who was basically like, so you're it, right? I'm like, I'm the guy. So got a solo exclusive with him. But Jakob, after his prelim on Friday night, he drew a big scrum, like probably the biggest scrum for anyone outside of the Chinese athletes. And that was just for a prelim. So same thing again tonight. He was very popular. He's a true global superstar, and he showed why again tonight. I would call this like a workman-like title. It's not like he was totally dominant, but he just sat.
I mean, did you watch the same race I did? I thought this was a fantastic race. This is bad news for Grant Fisher, folks. I mean, definitely there's some bad news for Grant Fisher. There's some good news for Grant Fisher. I thought this was a fantastic race. He had to work for this. I mean, the 3,000 is his his sweet spot. And if you didn't watch it, Berihu Aregawi, the Olympic silver medalist in the 10,000, had the lead with 400 to go. Jakob wanted to take the lead heading into the last lap. Aregawi held him off. And then Jakob still didn't have it coming off the final turn. So I thought that he had to wait a lot longer. It was a lot closer than I expected. And I thought this was a fantastic race for Aregawi. I mean, from reading on the message boards, apparently he was training for a half marathon, changed his course at the last minute, and hops in this. To be this competitive with Jakob in a 3,000 with no track races was scary to me. If you're a Grant Fisher fan and you think Fisher should be the favorite for the 10,000 outdoors, we got to remind ourselves Aregawi beat Fisher last year, and I think after this performance, he still needs to be the favorite of Fisher in the 10,000.
Okay, I'm still waiting for you to rebut the actual point I made, was that it was a workman-like victory for Jakob. I feel like that's exactly what you said. Somehow you were saying I'm wrong. It was a good run for Aregawi. I don't think it was like, I'm looking at the splits. To me, I'm like, okay, Aregawi, this is a guy who wasn't training for a 3K until like a couple weeks ago. And I don't know the inner workings of how this thing plays out, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Ethiopian Federation just calls him up and is like, oh yeah, World Indoors are in a couple weeks in China and you're going. And when you run for Ethiopia, that's just kind of what you got to do. If they want you to run the race, you run it. Yeah, he ran well. And Jakob, I don't think this was like you said, he tried to get the lead of the bell. I don't think this was exactly a tactical masterpiece by him. Like, he ran extra distance on the final lap on both turns, but he basically was like, I know I can outkick this guy. I asked him, like, do you get nervous at all? You left it quite late in this race. He's like, well, I raced Aregawi 4 years ago in the same distance, and I outkicked him in the last 100 in that one. So I was pretty sure I could do it again. I'm just like, Wow. And I looked up Lausanne 2021, Diamond League 3K. It's very, very similar. Jakob's, they're both a lot younger than this, obviously, but Jakob just sits on him and then moves to the front with like 40 meters to go. Today it was a little later, but his kick was there when he needed it, and he got the win, and now he's coming back for the 1500 tomorrow night, where he'll be the favorite again.
Okay, let me step in. The race was thrillingly entertaining. I mean, from a layman's perspective, no one's at World Indoors. The 3K was pretty loaded. Good Ethiopian contingent. Now, granted, like you said, Aregawi hasn't run a race all indoors, but Jakob's pretty, just did Europeans apart for the mile. So, I mean, I guess he's sharper than everybody else, but Aregawi put up a great challenge. I mean, the race went out so slow, 2:45. So then Jakob's like, okay, I got to get near the front. But he showed, especially indoors, he showed the way to try to beat him. He held him off at 200, and it's harder to pass indoors than outdoors. There's more variability in indoors racing, I think, because of that. And this one was in doubt, right? Until I had doubt with 100 meters whether Jakob was going to win this race. And I guess you could say, the same thing happens outdoors coming down this straightaway, And then behind it, the battle for silver. I mean, that was fabulous too. Sam Gilman comes roaring by for bronze, excuse me. Jakob and Aregawi sort of had a lead now, if you're watching now, and then Gilman passes Robinson on the backstretch, and I thought he had it, and he went a little too soon. I give Kai Robinson a lot of credit. He sort of came back on the final straightaway and passed him. But like, if you told me at the start of the year some guy named Sam Gilman would get fourth at the World Championships, I'd be like, no.
It was shocking. Like when I woke up, I'm waking up at 6:30 in the morning, watching this on. By the way, someone in the chat, Omri Fullman, wants me to see me rant about the broadcast. I can't rant about the broadcast because I'm waking up in a hotel room at like 6:30 a.m. and watching it. I'm mute in bed, trying not to wake up the rest of the family. I'm now broadcasting you live from the bathroom, but. This race, I woke up and I was like, kind of trying to remember what's going on in the 3000. I knew I wanted to see Jakob versus Aregawi, but I'm like, wow, this thing's loaded. We got Getting It Wally. We've got Mahare, the teen sensation from Ethiopia, who's run, sixth in the Olympics last year, running the 1240 low as an 18-year-old or something like that. And the fact that Kai Robinson and Sam Gilman end up being the ones that go 3-4 was shocking. I had to go back. Like I was so focused, and the victory was in doubt. I was only focused on the first two. I was not watching third or fourth. I had to go back and watch the whole race again. By the way, normally I'm the one that complains that all the Nike guys are wearing the same uniform. It drives me nuts. Like we're going to have, Swoosh Track Club Flagstaff, Swoosh Flagstaff Utah. They're going to wear the same goddamn uniforms. No, they should wear different color uniforms. But can the U.S. just wear the same color uniforms? We got some guys in the all blue and some guys in the silver. Driving me nuts. But I had to go back and watch this race, and it was fascinating. Gilman, a guy I've never heard of until 2 weeks ago. Like he blew by Robinson on the backstretch of that last lap, and he was actually gaining on Jakob and Aregawi. And I think, he would have thought at that point, like, what is he more likely to do with 100 meters to go? Win this thing or finish fourth? You might have even said win it. He was moving up, and then Robinson responded. And, got the silver. And there's a clip there. I might be able to put up the picture. But I did a slow motion clip. I almost tweeted out, but I thought I'd get sued by Peacock. They showed a front-on angle of the finish. And you can just see, Gilman realizes Robinson coming by. And he's just like, oh, man, I gave it my all. I can't believe this. Trying to find this clip. Oh, here we go. Just look in the background here, folks. It's about one step different than this, and Gilman just is dejected. But big shout out to Robinson. He ran a masterful race. He's coached by Ridge, right, John? He's in the OAC?
Yes.
The tactics on that race were perfect. I went and watched it. He got in on the rail and didn't do anything for 2,000 meters. He sat on the rail, did nothing. And then with 1,000 meters to go, he was in the back. He just made a big move. And he decided, it was clear, like in his head, 5 laps to go, put yourself in position. And he went wide. He went way out into lane 2, and he kept running and running and running and running and running. Didn't care about the extra distance. When you make your move, you got to make it count. It took him more than a full lap to get there, and he had the lead. So he
Yeah,
ran distance. He's willing to go extra distance for a lap or two, but before you get to the finish. And, I was actually watching Jakob a lot. He was in on the rail for most of the race. It makes me nervous when people pass him like around 2K because I'm like, how is he going to get out? He was kind of cautious. Like, I thought he ran fine tactically. I would probably run more towards the front just to stay out of trouble, but it's fine. He got the win.
Yeah.
This was entertaining to me.
Yeah, no, definitely. There were two great races in the last lap for gold and for bronze. And like you said with Jakob, I was watching him. He was looking around like all the time. Like he had his head in a swivel, just like making sure, all right, am I going to have an exit route if I need to get out, if I need to respond to Aregawi? Like he's constantly scanning just to make sure he can get off the rail if he needed to. So in that respect, I think he did a pretty good job there. And Robinson, like you said, Robert, I asked him after the race, I was like, what were you thinking? And he's like, well, around 800 to go, like when he makes that move for the lead. Sorry, there's a bunch of volunteers who are getting very excited in the background. I'm in a cavernous room here in Nanjing. But when he makes the move to the lead, he was like, I was thinking of the NCAA final in 2023 in Austin when he won the title. He was just like, I was feeling the same way. And I'm like, I got to make this move. If I got to shake something up. If I'm going to do anything, it has to be now. And I think that actually ended up winning him the medal because if you look at what happened to Gilman, his positioning, he was in pretty good spot, and then he got shuffled back. He was about ninth with maybe 300 meters to go or so. And at the bell, he was like 4 meters down, I think, on Robinson. And I just think that was the difference. Like he had to run a little bit extra, and Robinson was still in pretty good position because of that earlier move he had made. And it's interesting. I got a text from Mike Scannell, who has been coaching Sam Gilman. And he was like, what'd you think about that? Great race, huh? And I was like, yeah. And then I didn't realize he's in Nanjing. So I went down and walked to him in the media area. And he was basically saying the same thing. Like he was really happy with how he ran and early and putting in position. But then just him getting shuffled backwards, that's where he's like, that was it's kind of tough. And when that happens, one guy goes by you, two guys go by you. And like all credit to Sam, fourth in the world is just a fantastic, fantastic result. But I do think if he was a little closer to Robinson, he could have got that medal.
I can see Robert getting very excited here. I know what Robert's going to say. Robert's, go ahead.
I don't know what you think I'm going to say, but we've been looking for a training partner for Grant Fisher. We've got it. Sam Gilman's been training with Fisher. He's been training under Mike Scannell. Look, I've kind of dinged Fisher some, and I used to be a Jerry guy, and I still love Jerry. But all you college coaches who think you're the hot shit, we've got a high school coach you've never heard of who can coach these guys better than you. Mike Scannell, oh my God. I mean, this guy, we need to bow down to this guy. What he's done with Fisher over the last year and a half is amazing. And now he just gets some random guy we haven't heard of and gets him a medal at World Indoors. I mean, come on. Kai Robinson was a dominant NCAA runner. And Mike Scannell has Gilman right with him. Amazing. But these guys beat Aregawi. They beat Wally, never medal. So, I mean, I'm surprised Wally didn't get fourth here, but to beat Aregawi was big. It's not like these guys haven't run. I think Aregawi had run 7:29 and leaving. Wally had run 7:31, but it was an entertaining 3K. It lived up to the hype. Women's 3K, there wasn't much tactically to talk about. My girl Tanaki Weldon's a little bit upset. Got something else to say here?
Well, I'm just saying guys should be lining up to go train for Mike. I mean, like Scannell was I don't even know what his PB was before this year. I mean, this is fabulous. So he ran 13:15 at one of those last chance meets this year, but heading into the year, he'd run 13:25 3 years ago. I mean, you know how many guys in the U.S. are doing that right now? Now he's a world championship. Well, he mistimed it, John. As you said, he was too far back. He made up the gap really quickly on that backstretch, and then he blew it. But wow, I mean, and this is great news for great news or bad news for Grant Fisher. But the one thing, and there's a thing here in the comments, this race would have been a lot better if Josh Kerr and Cole Hawker were in here. It sure would have been. I mean, that would have been fabulous. But instead, you did have a 7:17 guy and a 7:21. Aregawi is very good at everything. He's running 7:21 at 3K, 2 silver medals at World Cross Country, silver medal in the 10K. He's just, before he used to never medal on the track. Now he's never won on the track. So him and Grant in the 10 outdoors this year, look out. All right, on to the
and Gilman, for the record, he was 6th at USA's in the 5,000 in 2023. So, that's not nothing. But obviously he was not a big name. going into this year. And Sam kind of admitted, he said in the interview, he's like, yeah, I don't think anyone would have predicted this at the start of the season. But he said coming in, he's like, my goal was absolutely to medal. I thought I could do it. And the fact that he was gaining on Jakob and Aregawi, two of the best runners of their generation, on the bell lap of a world championship final, that's sensational. So I do think he teased an announcement that he's got coming in terms of his coaching setup. He'd been talking earlier about how he's going to be going into the, WCAP with the Air Force. So I think he'd be a great training partner for Grant Fisher, and it looks like steps are heading in that direction, but stay tuned for an announcement.
I will say that if you're a Cole Hawker or a Kerr fan, I mean, I think this race doesn't scare you, because you would think that Jakob Ingebrigtsen would be more than a full second ahead of Kai Robinson and Sam Gilman. 7:46.09 for Ingebrigtsen, 7:46.25 for Aregawi, 7:47.09 for Robinson. I know they don't give you, extra medals for margin of victory, but that is worth pointing out. But
Robert, but as pointed here in the time, this was just like, it was essentially a jog fest with sprinting. It's all about tactics and pushing the last 800. Jakob was boxed really bad with 800 to go. Like the whole entire field was there for people didn't see it. This race was incredibly slow until the end. So it's just more about tactics, positioning, who can kick.
Well, I know. And what is Jakob's weakness spot? It's throwing down the last 400. So this is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Well, has anything changed for the 1500 outdoors? No, and it won't until we get to Tokyo and Japan. Nothing that happens this year, unless Jakob runs about 3:24, then I'll say he's the favorite.
But by the way, I was just talking about there's some not even a full-time coach, high school coach who's coaching laps around the pro coaches. Now we have Justin Rinaldi join the chat. That used to be his job. He was a bank guy. No one ever heard of him. Now he's gone full-time. Josh Hoey's sensational. He's joined the chat. He says, Jonathan Galt's doing a great job. John, you're doing an amazing job. Like these races are happening when I'm not awake, and I wake up and you have somehow an interview with every person in the field that I want to hear from, and extensive talks about what they say, and you describe what they say. I don't have to watch some stupid YouTube interview. You've been doing amazing work. You must be exhausted. So,
well, thank you for the compliment, even though you just called what I do a stupid YouTube interview, but I appreciate it. Obviously, it takes a lot of resources to send someone out here to World Indoors. I am, from what I can tell, the only other American journalist here is Johnny Pace of Flow Track, I haven't seen him in the mix zone. He's just been doing photos for them. So it does help. A lot of times I am able to get exclusives. But yeah, it's just, I think some of these athletes, like if I wasn't there, I think a lot of them would just walk right through the mix zone,
Well, I'm glad we sent you out there. But let's talk women's 3000. Not much tactically to talk about because Tanaka of Japan took it out and, does what the Japanese do, like leads and then gets destroyed. But in the end, I actually thought that Freweyni Hailu, who was probably the Ethiopian who was screwed up, she ended up winning this race, 8:30 dominant fashion, 8:37.21, wins by more than a full second. This is the girl that won the 1500 last year, had a sensational season, ran fast in the 1500, didn't get to go to the Olympics because they don't have a trials. So, this is a woman that should be definitely an Olympic medalist, in my opinion, and doesn't even get to run in the Olympics, but she dominates. I actually thought, the Ethiopian tactics are often terrible to me. I thought she ran a smart race. She was just in the mid-pack. You didn't notice her, and then she went to the front and won it. But the real interesting thing was what was happening behind her. And you had Jessica Hull, the Olympic medalist. She's ahead of Shelby. And heading into the last lap, it was kind of like who's going to get second, who's going to get third. And you got Whitney Morgan, the U.S. there, battling it out for a medal. And sort of heading into the bell or maybe the first turn of the last lap, if you had asked me, I would have thought, okay, Shelby Houlihan's not going to medal here. Like she was in third. She was pretty far behind Hull. I'm like, okay, which is more likely that Houlihan rallies and slams it home and gets the silver here, or she ends up fourth or fifth? And I would have thought fourth or fifth. But Shelby hit the backstretch and just, I don't know if something went off in her head or she just felt good or the girls ahead. Maybe it's just, but it just looked like, man, old Shelby's back. And she just better. She's never medaled before. She just threw down and ran down Jessica Hull and got the silver. I was extremely impressed by that and sort of shocked by it, to be honest.
I mean, Jessica Hull ran 3:50 and won the Olympic silver medal in the 1500 meters last year. And Shelby Houlihan ran her down in a global final. Now, I know this is World Indoors. It's not World Outdoors. But, I mean, Houlihan, this is a woman who we didn't totally know what kind of shape she was in when she came back a couple months. Her ban expired a little over 2 months ago. And I think we're all pretty confident she'd be in good shape. But to get a silver medal at World Indoors, this quickly, I mean, I think that has exceeded pretty much everyone's wildest expectations.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you well then.
So this race was at like 3:30 on the West Coast, maybe 4:30 or something. I didn't watch them live. So I first watched the men's 3K, and then I was trying to find the women's 3K, and sort of rewound. And I saw a picture of I could just tell like Hull was like leaning for something. I didn't see Shelby, even though she was obviously right in the image. And I was like, okay, Hull almost won it. It came really tight for that. And then I remember thinking, like, when I was watching the race and Shelby was back a bit, and I was like, oh, her time is up. Her time. I just kind of thought like her time at being at the top is up. Like she's going to be outclassed at this. I was thinking Hull does well. I could see Hailu up there. I'm just like, Shelby's just never really going to be able to contend, I don't think, with them. And fast forward about 2 minutes, and there she is getting the silver medal. Like, I mean, just really good run for her, obviously.
Yeah, and she said it was a lot of emotions because she said she crossed the finish line, and I would just think it would be like unbridled joy. This woman who's been in the wilderness for 4 years, who came close to medaling before her man, and now she's finally got it. And she's like, yeah, there was some happiness, but also grief. Like, I think she just said there's so many emotions. Like, she was running during her comeback, she was running on anger, and now it's like trying to process all of that. I think this is just a very emotional time for her, but yeah, she was really pleased, and I don't think it's something she wanted to go through, obviously, but she's back and she's on the podium. But we need to give some credit here, actually a lot of credit, to Freweyni Hailu. This was magnificent. She just destroyed everyone over the last 400 meters in this race. And this is a woman who won the 1500 this meet last year and got a medal in the 800 in 2022. So the versatility and the championship ability of her indoors is really, really impressive. And now the question for her is, can she translate it outdoors? Needs to be on the team first, obviously.
But she's the perfect example of what I think that they need. And like, if you gave, I don't even know who her coaching is, and I apologize for this, but it's like, if you had a trial system and legitimate mid-D coaches there, I think she'd probably be like a Faith Kipyegon type talent. I mean, the Ethiopians have historically just had horrific tactics in these shorter events, horrific coaching. They don't peak right, and they just chase times, and they're worn out. And we've seen it now recently on the men's side. They have the talent. Yared Nuguse, Ethiopian American. Abel Tafra, Ethiopian American. They're starting to dominate collegiately, at this level. Like they just need the coaching. And yeah, she was extremely impressive in this race. It is worth pointing out, this is only Jessica Hull's second race. She's not sharp either. But I just think that when you're Shelby and you don't have a shoe contract, to get Hull, to get the medal, I think this is a big help for that. And I do think about the emotions. Like, think about this. There's only really two ways to play this. One, well, I guess there's three ways to play this. One, she doped intentionally, is lying about it now. It's a total con. Two, she didn't dope intentionally, and was contaminated or some problem that happened or whatever. That's still suspension. But imagine that you've lost millions of dollars in income, millions of dollars. Certainly at least 1 million, probably 2, and now you're back. Like I would never get over that. So it's just a shocking. Like, the emotions must be massive if she's actually innocent.
Also, we should give a shout out to Whitney Morgan, who got fourth in this race. I mean, America almost, I guess she did get dropped a little bit on that last lap, but she was just regretting it, kind of like Sam Gilman. She was in pretty good position with about 500 to go, and then got shuffled back. As soon as Tanaka lost the lead, that was also when basically everyone was trying to get to the front. She got passed by 2 Ethiopians and another runner. And Morgan, at that point, she just couldn't quite get up there. And I think also, I mean, you got to remember who she's closing against. Hailu is probably a 1500 spec. That's probably her best event is the 15. Jessica Hull, definitely. Shelby, probably. Either the 3K is actually a great distance for Houlihan, but for Morgan, who I think professionally probably is going to have to run the 5K, I just don't know if she has the wheels for the 15. she said her best event was a 3K, but for her to only get outkicked by those three, I thought this was a really good run for her, and it just shows you what she can do when she gets a long stretch of healthy training underneath her, because that's always been her problem at BYU. And, even as a pro, it's happened. But to get fourth in this field, very good run for her.
All right, do we want to talk about the other action? By the way, if you're enjoying the show, folks, you can get this as a podcast. Join the supporters club today. I mean, come on. We're the only people that care about elite running. Other people broadcast it and try to extort money from mom and dads and make money and get venture capital. But we care about the sport. I'm broadcasting that from a bathroom on vacation and I woke up just thrilled to watch this race. Just thrilled that I was allowed to watch it, get to see it. And, we got to support events like this. It's not cheap to get to China. Let'sRun.com. You go to this website. It's called the internet. You go to Let'sRun.com/subscribe. Enter the code GOAT50. You can save 50% off your first year. I'll even send you a free T-shirt. All right. After this, I was rewatching the races and watching the men's 3K at least twice, the women's 3K 1.5 times. Then I made sure I watched the men's 60 hurdles live, and I was watching with my 7-year-old. I'm like, this is Daddy's friend because he's so friendly, Grant Holloway. My son's hates losing at anything. He's like, I'm always telling him, you have to lose. And then I'm like, well, this guy's never lost. He's never lost. Eventually he probably will, but he's never lost.
They did a good job on the broadcast of playing that up. When I thought, oh, this is it. Finally, the international broadcasters are talking about it. John, in the heats here, they played it up. I saw the semi, and they're like, he's never lost in the heat. The heat was kind of close. He probably only won by, I need to look it up. Maybe I would say 0.02. Is it that close? But keep going.
Well, I thought at the finish line, he had this little hop step, and I was like, oh, were you celebrating? That was you ran 6 hurdles. It was like an invisible hurdle. He's like, no, I just had a really bad lean. And I was like, well, he won by enough that he didn't really need to. But it wasn't the most elegant crossing of the finish line, but he did win and extend the streak.
And I was pleased the streak got also mainstream publicity in the Wall Street Journal. I need to take credit for this because we're at USA Indoors. I was talking to Rachel Bachman. And I said, hey, of the Wall Street Journal, I said, how do these stories get do they pitch the stories to you? Do you have to pitch them to you? She had a Shelby Houlihan article. She's like, no, we have to pitch them. And they look at the metrics. And I told her, I spent 5 minutes. I'm like, someone has to write an article on Grant Holloway's streak. It has to be done. And that I wanted them to title it the greatest unbeaten streak in sports that no one's heard of. They didn't use that for social media, but they did publish the piece. Go to Wall Street Journal, click on it, because she said it matters if you actually click on it or not. So I hope it went viral, but I'm taking credit for that's my role. I'm a PR person. I'm a good editor. I tell John kind of what to write, let him write it, come up with the headlines. That's my role here at Let'sRun.com.
Maybe insert a typo or two. With Grant Holloway, though, it's interesting. I asked him a couple things in the mix zone. One, he teased, as All in the Game is saying in the comments here, he teased running a new event in the off year of 2026. I was like, "Ooh, what would you be doing?" And he's like, well, I don't know, maybe the 400, do what Christian Taylor did that one year he gave up the triple jump, or because he was a good 400 runner at Florida. He was also a good long jumper. I don't know if he'd move to that, but it seems like the one thing that's really still driving him is the world record of the 110 hurdles. That's still his focus. But next year, I think he'd like to go 3P or 4P, but it would be 3 consecutive years of wins at World Indoors in the 60. After that, I think it would be up to anything. And I also asked him about Grand Slam track because I'm like, you're not committed. You were an NCAA champion at 60. I would think this is an event that would work really well for you, especially if you're talking about changing up events. And he's like, I don't think it works for me, just the way the season is set up. And I asked, well, is it because you'd have to run the flat 100? Because we talked to the podcast about how that might break up your rhythm. And he's like, no, it's not really that. I just think he wouldn't go into total specifics about it, but I think he just likes the Diamond League schedule he's on. And I think the other thing is, this was noted on the message board a couple of days ago, is if you're committing to run a Grand Slam track meet, it's, you're taking a good chunk of a week in terms of traveling there. And then I think you're doing basically media all day Thursday. They make everyone available. And then it's a 3-day meet. So then if you're not flying home until Monday, that's a significant chunk of time for these athletes. And I think someone like Holloway, he's like, yeah, the money's nice, but I would rather just structure the season exactly how I want to structure it rather than be, locked into all these 4 meets as a racer. So that was sort of his take on it.
John, that's only 2 extra days. I mean, come on. To me, it seems that it must be the doubling more so. Like the media obligation the day before. Grant Holloway has that a lot of times at a Diamond League. So
he didn't say that specifically. I'm just theorizing. But I asked him about the doubling. He didn't seem to be bothered about the 100. I think he would rather just be able to do exactly what he wants with his schedule rather being locked into 4 races at 4 specific times a year.
What he could be a challenger. What about being a challenger?
I think it's the same thing. I just don't think it appeals to him.
It's so early in the season. Is Grant usually running like hurdle races in April?
Well, I would love to know what his appearance fee in a Diamond League is versus here. I mean, he's throwing away $102,000, but how much does he get in the Diamond League? Does he get $50,000? So maybe he's only throwing away $200,000, $50,000 a meet. Who knows? I don't think he makes. I don't think he's making. Well, he's probably up after the Olympic gold.
I can't believe he won the flat 60. I forgot that. Because I really have no interest in him. I'm like, I don't even know what he'll run the 100 in. But you would think that would. Okay, I think for sure he'd now win the money because he's going to win the hurdles. But I'm like, how would Grant do in 100? But he's going to be faster than these guys in the 100, most of them.
Grant's one of the old-time freaks. We got to remember this in terms of track and field talent. He was Florida's fastest 4x4 runner in a few relays at the University of Florida, which is a powerhouse 4x4 program. He was splitting 43s. He was an NCAA finalist in the long jump. If he focused on that, maybe he's an NCAA champion in the long jump in college. He ends up giving that up when he turns pro. But this guy, he's just an absolutely ridiculous talent.
Look, we should point out this was the slowest winning time, 7:42. He won 7:39, 7:29, now 7:42. What event do we think he's going to pull up? To me, the natural would be the 400 hurdles. He's got world-class speed in the 400. He's a great hurdler. Combine the two, and you think you do it. But it's good to see him supporting the event. It's good to see Mondo. These are some of the biggest stars at the event. It's good to see Jessica Hull. It's only her second race. Thank you for showing up, and not just being – I mean, I guess the Grand Slam Cup guys are like, we're trying to grow the sport too. Maybe. I mean, you're also getting paid a ton of money. So it's just I think we have plenty of meets. We were getting a text from our ad guy. He's like, it was at NC Indoors with us. He's like, that's a better meet than Worlds. Because everyone's there at NCAs, and it means something. No one's skipping NCAs. If you're in college, you're running NC Indoors. So if we get all the pros to show up at this meet, it would be insane. So thank you, Grant, whatever. And other events, we had the 400 hurdles. We had the flat 400s. And the men's 400, John can explain how the U.S. had 3 entries, but we went 1, 2, 3. Chris Bailey 45.08, Brian Faust 45.47, and then Patterson 45.54. So good showing there for Team USA.
Yeah, so this was pretty interesting, Robert. Right before the race, Chris Bailey just goes up to Brian Faust and Jacory Patterson and says, "Hey, let's make history." No one's ever done it in the 400 because to get 3 entries at World Indoors, you need to have a World Indoor Tour champion, which Brian Faust was this year. So him and all 3 of these guys were looking for redemption because Patterson and Faust ran World Indoors last year. I think they both went out in the first round. And Bailey was on the anchor leg of the 4x4 for the US at World Indoors, and he got walked down by Alexander Dom of Belgium and got caught for the gold medal, even though he got the baton in the lead. So all of these guys were trying to make amends for it, and they did. They went 1, 2, 3. Faust got the lead. Bailey, who has been the best guy all season, really, he ended up passing him on the second lap. But terrific run by all of them. And the other interesting thing, I believe all 3 of these guys are unsponsored because Bailey, in terms of a shoe contract at least, Bailey has a track deal with Tracksmith, and I don't think the other 2 guys have a shoe deal either. So obviously you aren't getting all of the best guys. But Bailey was an Olympic finalist in the 400 last year. It's actually stunning to me. He doesn't have a shoe deal. He's only 24 years old. This guy is one of the very, very best in the world in his event. It's kind of crazy that he doesn't have a deal, and he's American. But no, it was a really good run for all of them, and they were all pleased to be part of this historic sweep.
I mean, it's not that surprising to me that Patterson and Faust don't have deals. They've never broken 45 seconds. But Bailey?
No, I'm saying Bailey.
Yeah, it's crazy. And also, you got to give Patterson and Faust credit. This shows these guys are hungry, man. These guys would die for for Grand Slam track. They would camp out.
Bailey's running Grand Slam track. He's going to be there. He just run one World Indoors. He's probably coming back for the 4x4 tomorrow. He was sort of suggesting there might be some doubt, and I'm like, dude, you're definitely on the 4x4 if you want to be. Like, you're the World Indoor champion. It's going to be up to you. But yeah, he's running the Grand Slam track in a couple weeks, and yeah.
Well, Noah Lyles is going to run it too, right? The 4x4. That's a joke, people. That's a joke.
It would be. Hey, how funny would it be though if like Fred Curley just comes out from under the bleachers? He's been in Nanjing the whole time. He's like comes in and runs the 4x4 for USA, just like trying to rebuke Noah Lyles, show him how it's done.
Someone's saying Patterson maybe with Adidas. I'm not sure.
I don't think so. He wasn't entered as Adidas. I mean, at USA Indoors, he had like a Nike. It wasn't a Nike Pro Kit, but it was like a Nike shirt. He was competing under CK Elite TC. So he may have had a deal with Adidas at some point, but I don't think anymore. All right, should we talk about, I guess the women's 400 also happened. Amber Anning, Arkansas alum, I think she's from Brighton, actually. She was honored at halftime of a Brighton and Hove Albion match a few weeks ago. So I believe she's a Brighton supporter, if not a Brighton native. So she wins gold for Great Britain. There was a little, it was a little physical, a little testy at the 200. I don't think there was a foul really with. Alexis Holmes, sort of subtly nudging Anning from preventing her to get to the inside lane. I think that's just sort of what happens in the indoor 400, but then very dramatic finish because Anning is coming on her outside and, they were neck and neck down the home straight and Holmes falls across the finish line, couldn't tell who got it. I think both of them were too exhausted to realize who won, and then the results come out, Anning just edged it. But that was a really fun race between the two of them.
Of course, she'd be a Brighton Hove Albion supporter. I'm glad that didn't make the international broadcast. But
if Tim Hutchings was on it, maybe it would have.
I mean, the indoor 400-meter racing is like a sideshow to me. And I guess the whole indoor sport is, but the indoor even more so. Because tactics factor in. I mean, having the lead at 200 helps, but obviously it's not determinative. But, we saw Whitaker run over a second faster than almost a second and a half faster than these women last week.
But that's the second fastest time in history. I mean, yes, the top two of the NCAAs were 49.2 and 49.7 or something. I mean, they both broke 50, but I was looking at, the winning time today in the men's 400 would have easily won NCAAs. So you could say, there's some collegians that can run faster. I mean, yeah. I mean, probably the 60 at the NCAAs was definitely faster than here, right, John, for the men's 60?
It would have been close. Because what was yesterday? 6.53 maybe? 6.52? But no, look, all three medalists today in the women's 400 were Olympic finalists last year in Paris. It's just the pros are on a different schedule. When you're Isabella Whitaker, and I don't even know if she has outdoor eligibility, if she's running outdoors for Arkansas, it certainly didn't seem like it. So when you're on a college team, the coaches are going to peak you to make sure you're ready to go in an NCAA championship. World championships, you're not probably peaking as hard when you're a professional. Certainly when you're at the level that Alexis Holmes and Amber Anning are, where you are trying to win, global medals outdoors.
For the record, I looked it up. 6:49 men's 60 winning time in both meets. I mean, there's very little World Indoors and NCAA. NCAA sprinting is insane. So is World Indoor sprinting. These were really high quality things. All right. I was surprised Mondo didn't set a world record, John. Seems like he always sets world records, but he gets another win. Anything else today, or should we sort of briefly preview tomorrow?
No, we got to talk about one of the performances of the day, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen on an indoor track. Nia Aikens falling in the 800-meter semifinal, getting up and almost making the final. Now, she didn't make the final, and I think she's kind of unfortunate that she didn't get advanced because in previous years, some of these meets, World Athletics or whoever the officiating crew is, has been fairly liberal with putting people through. But it's nuts. If you fall in the 800, that's supposed to be a death sentence, game over, especially in a world championship semifinal. And yes, she was helped by the second 400. The middle 400 was only run at like 64 seconds, but for her to get up, and she managed it so well. She didn't get up there too soon. She stayed on the rail, conserved energy. Like, I've criticized her tactics in the past, but she basically ran tactically perfect and just ran out of room. But for her to miss out in the final, she got fourth. The top three make it automatically. She was fourth by 0.18 of a second. It was so gutsy, so brave, like just an incredible run by her. And it's a shame because I'm confident if she was in the final, she would be getting a medal on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, John, watching, I didn't realize she was that close. It's 0.18. Because watching it, I'm like, I don't think she's going to get there. And on the broadcast, they're like, oh, I assume she'll get in the final. But a bunch of, like, there's other people obstructed. There was another fall in the final straight that took down, I think, the Kenyan. But when she fell, I was like, no, this is world athletics. When you fall here, you're out. At USA's, if you fall, they put you in the final. That's my general impression. But I guess that's not always the case.
Last year, they put 22 guys in the 5,000 meter final at the Olympics. It does. I think NCAA's usually is a bit more generous with advancing people, but there have certainly been times like Adam Fogg fell at World Indoors last year. He got put through to the final. Like, it happens. And essentially the reasoning was, well, she didn't get fouled when it happened. I'm like, yeah, but there wasn't really anything she could do. What happened was Daguma, she clipped Maloney, her with her back kick, and then Maloney, that basically that threw her stride off, and then she ends up clipping Aikens. And actually, both women who went down in this race, I believe, were clipped by Shafiqua Maloney's back kick from the front, because that also happened to Odira. It was hard to get a good angle on it, but you could clearly see there was some contact. So for Aikens, I look at it, I'm like, does she need to have been fouled for her to get advanced, or could you just argue like she really didn't do anything wrong, or she just should have been at the front because that's what you got to do? I don't know. It's hard to justify.
What'd she say afterwards, John?
She was pleased with how she ran, and she wanted to file a protest, which they did. But she said that this is a woman who at the Boston University meet a few weeks ago dropped out with 200 meters to go because things weren't going her way, because she said she had a panic attack in the race. And after that race, she went through therapy to essentially trigger herself and bring on some of these anxiety, panic moments, and learn how to deal with them. And she said that she really thought that helped at USA's. And she said today was the ultimate example. There is nothing more panic inducing than falling at a world championships. And she was able to get up and manage it beautifully and calmly. And she was like, I really do think that going through that therapy and exposing myself to those situations paid off today. And I agree with her.
Look,
and if we're talking grand,
this is, devastating to her. I think she might have won gold. Is that crazy? I mean, I think
Daguma, yes. I don't think she's beating Daguma, but I think she would have got the silver.
A medal. But big picture wise, no one's fortunes. I mean, look, she was the dominant U.S. runner. I mean, doing really well in recent years. She really struggled last year, sort of at the end of the season. And then beginning of the season was looking terrible with the new coach. And you're like, oh, my God. And then just the last month has been amazing for her. And I think big picture wise, this woman is in a great spot. She's clearly going to do well under the new coach, Ajay Wilson's coach in Philadelphia. Her head straight. This was an amazing run. It's disappointing, but she should be. I would be so pumped if I was her just looking forward. She's in a new group. She's excited. I'm kind of glad they're just not putting everybody in the final, particularly in the indoor 8. It's actually supposed to start in lanes. So, it changes everything. You don't foul. I'm surprised they didn't do it, but it's not a foul because your leg kick is too far. The people behind you can't be running into your legs from front. So I kind of see why they didn't do it. But
what happened there, Robert, though, it's not like Aikens ran up on her. What happened was Maloney got basically clipped by Daguma, and therefore the chain reaction. So it's, I'm not saying I get what you're saying, but Aikens, I don't think she was in a bad position or running stupidly or anything. She just kind of got screwed.
All right, now can I go to my criticism of Jonathan Gault now? Been waiting. High praise. If you're just joining us, folks, the guy down there is the only journalist left in the sport. We sent him to China. He needs to be supporting him. Go to letsrun.com/subscribe. Join the Supporters Club today. Look, I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch the 800 heats at middle of the night here, but I read your recap. And Josh Hoey, this guy's been sensational. Totally dominant. His coach was on the show earlier. Probably still listening. I mean, insane. I hope Ronaldo I hope this guy's clean. And I hope Ronaldo realizes his reputation's on the line because this is almost too good to be true. It's amazing. I think he's going to break the world record tomorrow. This is insane. I'm just reading the stuff, and I'm like, this guy's so damn good. This is the greatest thing we've seen as U.S. distance fans in a long time. Just I know he was a former high school star. This guy did nothing for 5 years, and now he's just. It reminded me of when Kip Keeter was on that 1 year indoors. It was just like, wow. You couldn't watch all the meets. You'd see the highlights, and this guy was just dominating. It was just insane. And I'm like, this is what Hoey's doing. He's just insane. But you sort of. In your recap, you said all three semifinals today like to run from the front, but only one man can be in the lead. So expect a fierce battle to get to the front when the gun fires for Saturday's final. I asked Crestan how he would handle it. What are you talking about, John? I don't think this will be a fierce battle at all. I think everybody will just bow down and let Josh Hoey take it. And if you're Crestan, this guy's much faster than you. Let him rabbit the field. Just like Rudisha did in the Olympics. Why wouldn't you want a rabbit for this race? So I think they're just going to bow down and let him say, hey, all right, buddy, you want a time trial from the front? We'll get in your slipstream, and it's a better spot. So I think they're just I think nobody can run with them anyways. So they're just going to let him have it, and the front runners will just get in line, and it'll be a time trial. This is going to be
I mean, if you want a PR, sure. If you want to win a gold medal, I don't think letting Josh Hoey just get to the front is the best idea. He's going to tell you to fast time, but you're not. That's it. You're not getting around him because he's faster than you. My thinking is, if you're going to win gold, try to get to the front and slow it down. And maybe that's just Hoey just has to work a little bit harder to get around you, and it's pointless, and you've torpedoed your own race. There's obviously a risk you're taking there. And I think when someone is so much fitter than everyone else, which I think Hoey is right now, there really aren't many strategies to beat him. But I don't think the race will be close, but I think maybe Crestan or Miller, they're really, maybe they tried it really hard to get the lead at 200.
Okay, a couple of things. I posted a thread last night. Here's how Hoey gets beat. Because the thread, give Hoey the gold. I think the number one way he loses is if he goes out too fast the first 200. My strategy would be not to get the lead and slow it down. It's just battle the first 200, make Hoey go fast because he's going to get the lead. Make him run 23 seconds or something. And maybe that throws him off. The other, I said that's about a 10 to 15% chance that it happens. I think whatever the chances of falling, what are the odds of falling? I think that's about 5%. The other percent is the nerves get to him, 5%. I think he probably wins this thing about 75% of the time. But it also is when they say this is the second fastest guy ever at this event, it's sort of crazy and shows how far he's come. But Robert, the world record is going to go down. Why do you think that?
Did you watch the semi today, Weldon? He ran 145 and made it look like a joke. He was barely even breathing, and the guy right behind it, he described it as a tempo today when I talked to him in the Knicks zone. Now, maybe that was just him saying he was upping the tempo, but it did not look hard for him. Meanwhile, the Ugandan guy who gets second finishes a second and a half behind. He just collapses to the track. He's totally all out. He made it look really, really easy. And he has already run 143.2. He missed the world record by 0.6 of a second. And then I talked to Justin Rinaldi, his coach, and I'm like, what do you think he could run right now outdoors? And he's like, I think he's in 141 shape right now outdoors. So I don't think it's crazy to think we could see a 142 tomorrow. And I will remind you, the last time the world record was broken, it was by Wilson Kipketer. It was at this meet in the final, in his third race in 3 days, and he had actually broken the world record earlier in the meet as well. So I don't think it's crazy to suggest that the world record could go down. I don't know if this is a particularly fast track. I don't think it is really, but he's in ridiculous shape right now.
Look at that picture. Look how far ahead he is. It's just reading about this has got me excited. I'm just pumped. I'm going to definitely watch that one live. And the other thing that I didn't like about your recap was Brandon Miller won another heat. And you know, the you said in a race where only top 2 advanced to the finals and there are no time qualifiers, it was surprising to see the rest of the men in Heat 3 allow Miller to open up a 12-meter lead halfway through the first 400. His 51.74 was quick, but not ridiculously so. Miller went 51.55. These other guys aren't capable of, they're not in shape. Like, what do you want to do? We want them to go out in 52 and run 56? I mean, like, these guys, they're not in
Robert,
like
it's an
shape. Like
this is the international 800. 51.6 isn't that fast. Like, come on.
Samuel Chappell ran 1:44 to win Euros. He was in this race. You don't think he can go out in 52 seconds and not be winded in an 800? I think you're insane. I was looking at this. I'm like, these guys realize how good Brandon Miller is? Like, you can't just you're basically just letting him have a spot in the final. Like, I found it crazy. I don't think I stand by what I said. It's quick, but it's not crazy. It's not insanely so. Glad to see Weldon's backing me up on that one. All right, so those are the 800 finals. We've also got the 1500 final. Jakob Ingebrigtsen's in there on the men's side. I mean, I feel like Samuel Tefera, who was the one guy I thought maybe might have a chance to upset him because he beat him at World Indoors 3 years ago. He was a pre-meet scratch. I think the 1500 is just, I mean, it's basically going to be a rerun of the Euros final. And Jakob won that one. And it's the guy who was the silver medalist, Habs, isn't in the race either. So I think Jakob will be a pretty dominant winner tomorrow, more dominant than he was tonight. And then on the women's side, you know, I picked Welteji beforehand, but I think both Heather McLean and Sinclair Johnson look good in their prelims. You know, they're going to need a good run to get a medal, but I think it's absolutely possible.
I guess that is one race. The women's 15 prelims, whenever those were, I completely missed those. But one more thing on the 800. It's interesting, John, because I didn't read your recap, but my take was like, oh, he's only running. I watched the race. I was like, oh, he's only going 145 in these things. He's not that sharp. Just shows how two people can watch the same thing and just have different reactions. But he did destroy everyone. John, did you get the impression Miller was dying there at the end, or he knew how much space he had?
I asked him because it was hard for me to tell, and he basically said, no, I tried to keep it under control. Like, I knew that I had a pretty big lead, and I think he was ready to respond and pick it up a little bit. But he's like, it wasn't easy to hold on, but he also was like, I think he could have gone faster if he needed to. So that was good to hear from him. Well,
it's going to be a good final day. We'll probably go live afterwards. John, but seriously, you've been doing an incredible job with these recaps. I always say print media is dead. It's not dead when with these times that are going on, because it's very hard to watch these live unless you get up really early in the U.S. So we're staying up really late. Well, I guess not late if you're like a college kid or a normal person, but when you're 39 like me, staying up to like 1 a.m. on a family vacation when you're sharing the same room with a 7-year-old is kind of off the table. But should be a fun one.
All right, great. I got to catch a shuttle and work on some of these recaps. We've got a little bit of things to write about. So, yeah, I won't be at the morning session tomorrow, guys. So hopefully if you need something on the women's 60 hurdles qualifying, you can get it from elsewhere. Because Let's Run visitor who lives in Nanjing has reached out and said, would you like to go on a tour of the city? And I was like, well, I can't pass that up. I don't speak Chinese, but he does. So it's very helpful to have. Like, I'm looking forward to it.
John, be careful. I know this is the guy that was draped in an American flag at the Gaoyang cross country like 12 years ago, but this guy could be a double agent. He could be something for the CCP party, trying to make you think he's an American. He played me up. He used me 10 years ago. So watch out, John. Just be careful.
Okay. Keep my head on a swivel.
I guess CCP is not like China. It's a different country, isn't it?
No.
CCP is the Chinese Communist Party. CCCP is the Soviet Union.
Okay.
It's big on the CCs. That's my daughter's name. If you want this as a podcast, there'll be no background noise, no nothing. Thanks to the amazing, audio editing software. Join today, letsrun.com/subscribe. Use code GOAT50 to save 50%. See you guys tomorrow.